It's been said that knowledge is power, and when it comes to SCP-2440, that might really be the case. Like many of the anomalies and entities that have been kept on file by the SCP Foundation, SCP-2440, the being known as the Sealed King, is a malicious creature of untold, devastating power. The key word there is untold, and we mean it in the most literal sense. You cannot know about SCP-2440. It must remain untold. Unless, of course, you have at least level 4 clearance. You do have the right level of clearance, don't you? We really would have to hate to break out the amnestics and wipe your memory at the end of this video. Assuming that you do have adequate clearance, then it is time to introduce you to SCP-2440, known to some as the Sealed King or Zeotla to its friends, if it had any friends, that is. If you are familiar with the likes of the infamous Hanged King or the even more infamous Scarlet King, then you will have heard the term Eldritch Being thrown around before. An Eldritch abomination is an almost godlike entity, one which does not adhere to the natural laws of the universe as we understand them. Their disturbing otherworldliness is almost indescribable to any mortal person. It is a description that can be easily used to define SCP-2440, along with the words Keter Class anomaly and existentially terrifying. The Sealed King is an extra-dimensional entity, a being that inhabits a plane of existence far outside the physical reality of our own universe. While the creature's physical appearance has yet to be observed by any in this dimension, some have depicted it as resembling a gigantic being with a mass of squid-like tentacles, along with a glowing humanoid form in its center. What makes SCP-2440 such a formidable threat, however, is not just the creature's immense size. One of SCP-2440's core abilities is the power to influence and manipulate the minds of mortal beings. But this isn't as simple as the Sealed King choosing one person from our universe and driving them like a remote-controlled car. SCP-2440's influence is spread memetically. By manipulating data and information, SCP-2440 slips its memetic agents into texts, images, even spoken phrases, and other audio stimuli. Think of it like subliminal messaging or product placement. Imagine for a moment that you see a character on a TV show eating a certain brand of black and white sandwich cookie, and that makes you decide that you want to go to the store and buy some delicious black and white sandwich cookies to enjoy for yourself. That idea was planted in your head by something you saw, and it had an influence on your behavior. SCP-2440 operates on a very similar principle, but with one key difference. Once enough people become aware of it, SCP-2440 will use those to subtly spread its influence, controlling the actions of those it manages to infect, and its hold becomes stronger the further they spread the knowledge of the Sealed King. To put it plainly, the more people that become aware of the Sealed King's existence, the more powerful this eldritch abomination becomes. The range and scope of SCP-2440's abilities varies depending on the quantity of people its influence has been memetically spread to. According to research by the SCP Foundation, if 200 people or less have been infected, then these individuals will demonstrate an increased interest in media belonging to the horror, science fiction, or fantasy genres, whether this be films, books, or images that fall into one of these categories. Exposure to these desired materials is believed to increase the spread of the Sealed King's influence. If the number of infected individuals climbs to between 201 and 500 people, then SCP-2440 has been known to take direct control of a single infected person. This control is somewhat limited though, with the Sealed King only able to maintain a connection with the controlled host for half an hour. During this time, the infected person will attempt to infect further people by creating works that contain subtle details about the nature of SCP-2440. Historically, when infection levels have reached this phase, Foundation researchers have been able to communicate with SCP-2440 through conversations with its host. The creature displays a very hostile attitude towards humanity, and it has been quite open with the fact that its sole purpose is to continue infecting individuals until it is able to manifest physically in our reality without the need for a host, something that feels like it's right out of the evil eldritch entity playbook. When infection of the knowledge spreads up to 1,500 people, SCP-2440 becomes able to take full control of another infected individual without the previous limitations. By making them fully subservient, it will then use this person to speak simultaneously to any and all that have been infected with information regarding the Sealed King. Next, if up to 10,000 people become infected, more of SCP-2440's abilities start to influence this dimension. The creature is known to be able to distort and reshape reality, though at this point SCP-2440 still needs to control a host. But even though its powers and abilities have increased, at this stage the creature shows no interest in actually using them, and its focus still remains on using its human host to spread its memetic agents, furthering the infection. Once the number of people infected by SCP-2440 through subliminal memetic information surpasses 10,000, the Sealed King is able to manifest its true form outside of a human host for a maximum time frame of 1 hour. This is the point of no return, as SCP-2440's reality-bending powers are dramatically increased. The methods that would have previously kept the creature at bay will cease to be effective, and it can take direct control of up to 1,000 of those it has infected. Normally, the SCP Foundation limits the number of people permitted to know about SCP-2440 to 100 cleared personnel. This is achieved through the use of amnestics. Given that SCP-2440 is a creature that grows stronger the more people know about it, these drugs certainly seem like a viable way of keeping that number nice and low. But once infection numbers reach 10,000, that's when amnestics are just no longer enough. Based on the information about the Sealed King that is available to them, SCP Foundation personnel have projected that if the number of people infected by SCP-2440 ever reached as high as 100,000 or more, the creature would likely be able to manifest outside a host for longer, possibly up to 2 hours. It is also believed that SCP-2440 would be capable of creating dimensional portals, either inviting anomalies from other universes into our own, or simply creating its own anomalous creatures. By this point, any and all infected individuals would be fully under the Sealed King's control. Finally, if 1 million people were to become infected, SCP-2440 would most likely achieve its ultimate goal. The eldritch creature would be able to fully and permanently manifest itself in our dimension, in its true form, most likely leading to an XK Class end-of-the-world scenario. Fortunately, through the dispensing of amnestics, the SCP Foundation have managed to prevent such a scenario from coming to pass. Additionally, containment teams are regularly sent to investigate any reported awareness of SCP-2440, and any infected individuals are either treated with memory-altering drugs or simply terminated. The entity has been known to spread its influence through text too, though, and even the documents within the SCP Foundation's archives aren't safe. The Foundation attempts to keep any links to the Sealed King within other SCP files hidden to avoid a spread of knowledge about this extra-dimensional eldritch abomination. However, while only 100 members of authorized SCP personnel are aware of SCP-2440, the Foundation isn't the only organization aware of this being's existence. A group calling themselves the Children of God is comprised of individuals previously infected with the knowledge of SCP-2440's existence, and has supposedly been around even longer than the Foundation has. These people worship the Sealed King as a deity, and seek to infect others with the same information that the creature uses to influence them. Carrying out the whims of this extra-dimensional threat, the Children of God attempt to spread the word, as it were, by any and all means available to them. The Foundation considers any member of the Children of God to be highly dangerous, and containment teams are advised to either capture them on site or use lethal force to terminate them. The Children of God were previously based in a compound somewhere in the United States, and during an assault on their base, the Foundation was able to recover documents that describe the possible origin of SCP-2440. According to these documents, at the very dawn of time, old gods emerged from the empty abyss of nothingness, otherwise referred to as Mother Void. This entity granted life across the universe, all other realities, and every conceivable dimension. However, the story detailed in the Children of God's legend claims that the old gods were fickle, twisted, and brutal things, with no purity in them. It seems to suggest that the old gods were similar entities to SCP-2440, capable of bending and reshaping reality, and apparently did so purely for their own amusement within the newly created universe. These old gods created creatures in their own image, toying with the fabric of reality like children with blocks, building and destroying at will. Before long, the old gods began to turn on each other, focusing their natural jealousy on their siblings that had been born of the void. The firstborn of the void and chaos, a being called Metal, coveted the creations of his fellow old gods, and flooded the newly created worlds with a rampaging army of vile, grotesque beasts he had made. As Metal attempted to kill his various siblings, the other old gods retaliated and sent the universe into a period of darkness where the blood of young life flowed like water. However, none of the old gods could ever die, only be forgotten. But they had created so many creatures to serve them and fulfill their purposes that it seemed impossible that this would ever happen. The Children of God's documents then describe Xiotla, or SCP-2440 as he is otherwise known. Apparently the firstborn of Mother Void and an entity called Father Light, SCP-2440 is also referred to by many reverent titles such as Lord of the Gods, Devourer of the Impure, and Savior of Life. Being both born of light and darkness of the void, Xiotla was considered to be a true god, and according to the creature's followers, did not set about creating life, but perfecting it. The old gods turned on Xiotla, his half-siblings attacking him with the armies and monstrosities they had created. However, some of these creatures turned on their masters in service of SCP-2440 instead. After generations of warfare between SCP-2440 and the old gods, Xiotla finally vanquished Matol in single combat that lasted 10,000 years and laid waste to countless worlds, almost tearing the universe apart. Eventually prevailing, Xiotla cast his siblings down into oblivion. But as he did so, Matol cursed him, banishing SCP-2440 from the universe, implied in these documents to have been our very own reality. The Children of God venerate the creature as their Lord and Savior, with more of their documents claiming that this king of all mankind is wrongfully sealed away. They believe their sealed king is returning, destined to reappear in this dimension and lay waste to our reality. Whether this is truly the origin of SCP-2440, or just what the entity wishes its infected disciples to believe, is unclear. Whatever the case, we suggest you quickly forget everything you know about SCP-2440 for your own safety. Now check out SCP-001 The Scarlet King and SCP-2845 Alien God Crash Lands on our planet the Deer for more entities that could destroy everything we know and love in a heartbeat.